The purchase, from he bought a pet, yet she chose to be his wife. Humanity? HFY tale. The market was loud with voices, filled with the smell of smoke and dust. Rows of cages lined the street, each holding strange creatures brought from different corners of the galaxy. Some growled, some hissed, and some only stared with empty eyes. Ethan walked slowly through the crowd. He was a human living on the colony world of Veleran 3, far from Earth. Life here was quiet, almost too quiet. After years of working and living alone, loneliness had become his only true companion. That was why he had come here to find something to share his home with. Not a friend, not a lover, but at least a presence. The seller, a tall alien with rough gray skin, waved at him. Looking for company, human? We have the best selection. Pets from across the stars. Loyal, obedient, quiet. Ethan said nothing at first. His eyes moved from cage to cage, searching. Most of the creatures looked wild, untrusting, or dangerous. He was about to leave when he noticed a small figure at the very end of the row. She was different. The figure sat in silence, unlike the others who growled or whimpered. She was humanoid in shape, slim, fragile, with silver hair that caught the dim light. Her eyes, large and violet, did not look broken like the others. Instead, they followed every movement, sharp and calculating, as if she was studying everything. Ethan frowned. This one. She looks different, the seller chuckled. Ah, yes, that one. Pretty, isn't she? Very obedient. She doesn't fight. She's quiet, makes no trouble. Many humans buy her kind. They make good house pets. Pet? Ethan asked, his voice uncertain. Yes, her kind were trained for companionship. They listen, they serve, they don't complain. She will sit where you tell her, sleep where you say, and never leave your side. Perfect for someone who lives alone. Ethan looked again. She didn't seem like an animal. Her eyes were too aware, too human. But maybe that was why she caught his attention. The girl's gaze locked with his. For a moment, he felt as if she was staring into his very thoughts. There was no fear in her eyes, only patience. How much? Ethan asked quietly. The seller grinned and named a price. It was more than Ethan wanted to pay, but he gave the credits without arguing. The cage opened, and the girl stepped out slowly. She did not crawl. She did not bow. She stood upright, her head high, though her wrists carried faint scars of restraints. She did not speak, but her silence carried weight. Ethan expected her to follow him like a pet, but instead she walked beside him, step for step, like an equal. His home was a small house on the edge of the colony. Metal walls, a single table, one bed, and a chair. It had always felt empty, but now, with her presence, it felt strangely alive. He set a cushion on the floor. You can stay here. This is yours. She looked at the cushion, then at him. Slowly, she walked past it and sat on the chair instead. Her violet eyes never left his. Ethan felt a chill. You understand me, don't you? She tilted her head slightly, then gave the smallest nod. He froze. Pets were not supposed to understand. Pets were not supposed to nod. Hours passed. He tried to act normal, cooking his dinner, fixing the lights, avoiding her stare. But every time he looked up, she was watching him. Not like a pet watches its owner, but like someone who is measuring him, judging him. That night, as he lay in bed, he heard soft footsteps. She had moved from the chair to stand near him. He opened his eyes and found her staring down at him, her silver hair falling across her face. What are you doing? He whispered. Her lips parted for the first time. Her voice was soft, almost trembling, but clear. Why? She asked. Ethan sat up slowly. Why? What? Her eyes shone in the darkness. Why? Buy me? The question struck him harder than He expected. No pet should ask that. No pet should even form the words. Ethan stared at her, his heart racing. He didn't know what to answer. She leaned closer, her eyes locked on his, and repeated, "Why?" The night grew colder, but Ethan could not sleep. That one word echoed in his head. He had bought a pet, yet what stood in front of him was no simple creature. She was something more, something dangerous, something he did not yet understand, and deep inside, he felt this was only the beginning. The next morning, sunlight pushed through the thin curtains of Ethan's home. He woke to the sound of quiet movement in the kitchen. For a moment, he thought it was a dream. But when he walked in, he saw her. The girl was standing by the counter, watching the small cooking unit. She held a cup in her hand, turning it as if she was trying to understand its purpose. Ethan frowned. "What are you doing?" She looked at him calmly, and placed the cup down without a word. "You're not supposed to touch things," he muttered, though his voice sounded weak even to himself. Her violet eyes didn't waver. She tilted her head, studying him again, as if she was the one trying to figure him out. Ethan sighed and sat at the table. He wanted to believe she was just curious, like a child, but there was something sharper in her movements. Every step she took seemed intentional, like she was testing boundaries. Later that day, Ethan tried giving her food. He set a bowl on the cushion he had placed for her the night before. "Here," he said, trying to sound firm. "This is yours." She looked at the cushion, then at the bowl. For a long moment she didn't move. Then, instead of kneeling on the cushion, she walked over and sat at the table across from him. Ethan blinked. "That's my seat." She ignored him. She picked up the spoon and began to eat slowly, with careful, deliberate motions. Not clumsy, not messy. She ate like someone who had done it before. Ethan stared. Pets were trained to eat from bowls on the floor. They never used spoons. They never sat at the table. "You've done this before," he whispered. She looked up at him. 4. The first time, there was a faint curve at the corner of her lips. Not a full smile, but something close. As days passed, Ethan noticed more strange behaviors. She copied him. When he folded his arms, she folded hers. When he leaned against the wall, she leaned the same way. She studied his gestures, his tone, a voice, even his breathing. At night, when he read from an old book, she sat beside him, her eyes following the words, though he doubted she could read his language. Sometimes, when she thought he wasn't looking, her lips moved silently, imitating the words he spoke. Ethan tried to ignore it, but the truth became harder to deny. This was not a mindless pet. One evening, he returned home from the colonies. Marketplace. He found her standing by the window, staring at the stars. "You're supposed to stay inside," he said, trying to sound stern. She didn't turn. "Stars," she whispered. Ethan froze. The word was clear, soft, and heavy, with meaning. He stepped closer. "You can speak more, can't you?" She turned her head slightly, her silver hair catching the faint glow of the sky outside. For the first time, her voice came steady and unbroken. "Do you love me?" Ethan's breath caught. The words were simple, but the weight behind them struck him like lightning. He took a step back. "What did you just say?" Her violet eyes locked on his. "Do you love me?" Ethan shook his head, his chest tight. "You're not supposed to ask things like that. You're not. You're—" She interrupted him, her voice low but firm. "Not a pet." The silence that followed was heavy. Ethan's hands trembled slightly. He wanted to deny it, to call it madness, but deep down he knew she was right. Her eyes were not the eyes of a pet. They were the eyes of someone alive, aware, and far more dangerous than anyone realized. That night, he lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Her words echoed in his mind. "Do you love me?" not a pet. He had bought her to fill the silence in his home. But now, the silence was gone, replaced by questions he could not answer. And somewhere inside him, fear and curiosity battled that, who was she really? And why did she choose him? Days passed, and Ethan could not stop thinking about her words. Nada. Pet, they repeated in his mind every time he looked at her. The girl moved around his home as if she belonged there. She no longer sat on the cushion he gave her. Instead, she used the chair, the table, and sometimes even the bed when he wasn't there. She did not ask for permission, and strangely, Ethan found himself unable to stop her dot. It was as if she was slowly rewriting the rules of his own home. One evening, Ethan returned after a long day of work repairing colony equipment. He expected to find her sitting silently as usual. Instead, he walked in to see her arranging the table, 2 plates, 2 cups, and food she had somehow managed to prepare. Ethan froze in the doorway. What are you doing? She looked up, her violet eyes glowing faintly in the warm light. Dinner. He shook his head. No, pets don't cook. They don't set tables. She tilted her head slightly, as if amused. Then she pointed at the seat across from her. Sit. Ethan wanted to argue, but something in her voice was different. It wasn't a request, it was closer to an order. Against his better judgment, he thought the food was simple, clumsy, but edible. She watched him take the first bite, her gaze sharp, waiting for his reaction. It's good, he admitted slowly. Her lips curved again, not quite a smile, but close. And I will cook for you. Every night. Ethan leaned back in his chair, uneasy. You don't have to do that. You're not. Before he could finish, she interrupted. Her voice was quiet but steady, carrying a strange weight. I am your wife. The words hung in the air like thunder. Ethan stared at her, shocked. What did you just say? She looked straight into his eyes, unblinking. Your wife, his pulse quickened. No, you're not. I bought you. You were? You were. Sold as a pet. She leaned forward, her violet eyes fierce. Not pet, not servant, wife. Ethan shook his head, his thoughts spinning. You don't understand what that word means. But deep down, he wasn't sure of that. Her voice carried certainty. She spoke as if the word had lived in her heart long before she said it aloud. The next day, he tried to ignore her declaration, but she didn't let it go. When he repaired the solar panels outside, she followed him, standing beside him under the burning sun. Wives stand with husbands, she said simply. When he carried supplies back to the house, she took half the weight from his arms without asking. Wives share burdens. At night, when he sat at the table, she placed her chair beside his instead of across. Wives sit next to husbands. Ethan could feel the walls of his resistance crumbling. She was not playing. She was not pretending. Every action she took carried meaning. Every word, every look was building something he could not name. One night, unable to stay silent, Ethan confronted her. Why are you doing this? He asked sharply. Why keep saying you're my wife? Why me? She stood still for a moment, her silver hair glowing faintly under the dim lamp. Then she stepped closer until she was right in front of him. Her voice was soft but clear. Because you chose me. Ethan blinked. I bought you. That's not the same. But she shook her head firmly. Others walked past my cage. They looked and turned away. You stopped. You saw me. You chose. Her words cut deep into him. He wanted to deny them, but he couldn't. The memory of her violet eyes meeting his in the marketplace haunted him still. Her gaze softened slightly. Where I come from, when one chooses? It is bond. It is marriage. Ethan sat down, his hands trembling. He had never believed in fate, never believed in destiny. But her words made him wonder. He whispered, almost to himself, "This isn't how it works for humans." She leaned closer, her eyes locking onto his. "Then teach me. Teach me how humans love." Ethan's heart pounded in his chest. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. She was no pet. She was no slave. She was declaring herself as something far more dangerous, far more intimate. And in that moment, Ethan realized something terrifying. He could not bring himself to push her away. That night, as he lay awake, he heard her quiet voice from across the room. "I am your wife." It wasn't a question. It wasn't a plea. It was a promise. And Ethan knew his life would never be the same again. The colony's suspicion. He bought a pet, yet she chose to be his wife. Humanity, HFY tail. The colony was small. Everyone knew everyone. And rumors spread faster than fire in dry grass. At first, no one paid much attention to Ethan's new pet. People often bought alien companions to fill the loneliness of frontier life. But after a few weeks, whispers began to rise. Noticed she didn't act like the others. She didn't walk on all fours, didn't wait for commands, didn't keep silent. Instead, she moved with confidence, as if she belonged wherever she went. One morning, Ethan walked through the market, with her beside him. She did not trail behind like a trained creature. She walked at his side, step for step, her chin lifted, her violet eyes scanning everything. It was a small thing, but people saw it. And people talked. Later, Ethan met his friend Marcus at the repair yard. Marcus leaned close, his voice low. "Ethan, what's going on with your pet?" Ethan stiffened. "What do you mean?" Marcus frowned. "Don't play dumb. I saw her at the market. She doesn't act like the others. Too human." Ethan forced a laugh, though it sounded hollow. "She's just different, smarter than most." But Marcus didn't smile. His eyes narrowed. "Different isn't always good. You better be careful." Ethan walked away, but the warning echoed in his mind. That evening, at dinner, he watched her across the table. She ate slowly, with perfect manners, copying every detail of human etiquette she had learned. When she caught him staring, she tilted her head. "What is it?" "People are starting to notice you," Ethan said quietly. "They don't like it." She set her spoon down. "Because I act as wife, not pet?" Ethan's chest tightened. "Yes, that's exactly why." Her violet eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. "Then let them see. I am not afraid." Ethan rubbed his forehead. "You don't understand. Humans fear what they don't understand. If they think you're more than a pet, they'll take you away, or worse." For the first time, she went silent. Her eyes darkened, but she didn't argue. The next day, Ethan took her to the colony square to buy supplies. The stares were stronger this time. Men and women whispered behind their hands, children pointed, and guards kept their eyes fixed on the strange pair. At one stall, the merchant glanced at Ethan, then at her. "Control your pet," he said coldly. Ethan's jaw tightened. "She's fine." But before he could say more, she stepped forward and placed coins on the counter with steady hands. "We pay," she said, her voice calm and clear. The merchant froze, eyes wide. People around them turned at the sound of her voice. Pets were not supposed to speak. Ethan's stomach dropped. He grabbed her arm and pulled her away from the crowd, his heart racing. "What were you thinking?" He hissed when they reached a quiet street. Her eyes flashed with stubborn fire. I'm not shame. I will not hide." Ethan clenched his fists. "You don't understand. This isn't just about you. They'll think I broke the law. They'll think I'm dangerous. They could lock me up." "They could." She stepped closer, her voice softer but filled with steel. "I chose you. I will not let them take you from me." That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He paced the floor, his mind full of fear. The colony council had strict rules. Pets were property, nothing more. If they suspected she was more than that, everything could collapse. Suddenly, he heard movement. He turned and saw her standing by the window again, staring at the stars. "They watch you now," she said quietly. Ethan sighed. "Yes, and it's only going to get worse." She turned, her silver hair glowing faintly in the moonlight. "Then tell them truth. Tell them I am your wife." Ethan's breath caught. "That would destroy us both." She stepped closer, her eyes burning with strange devotion. "Or free us." The next morning, Ethan stepped outside and saw Marcus waiting. His friend's expression was grim. "Ethan," Marcus said, "the council wants to see you. Tonight." Ethan felt a chill crawl down his spine. The council knew, and whatever happened next would decide both their fates. The council chamber was small, but it felt like a prison when Ethan walked inside. The stone walls seemed to close in, and the heavy doors locked behind him. With a loud thud, 5 council members sat at a long table. Their faces were hard, their eyes colder than steel. Behind them, guards stood ready. Ethan's stomach twisted. He wanted to turn back, but it was too late. She was beside him, calm, steady, her silver hair glinting under the lantern light. She didn't look afraid. But Ethan's heart hammered with fear. One of the council members, an older man named Harrow, spoke first. His voice was sharp. "Ethan, do you know why you stand here?" Ethan swallowed. "No, sir." Harrow leaned forward. "Your companion. She behaves in ways no pet should. She walks beside you, not behind. She speaks. She acts like an equal." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The other council members nodded grimly. Another voice cut in a woman with piercing eyes. "This colony cannot allow such confusion. Pets are pets. If one forgets its place, it is dangerous. And if an owner encourages—" Her gaze burned into Ethan. "That is worse." Ethan's mouth went dry. He wanted to explain, to lie, to say it was all a mistake. But before he could speak, the girl stepped forward. "I am not pet," she said, her voice ringing clear. The chamber fell silent. Guards stiffened. The council stared in shock. "I am wife," she continued, her violet eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. "Chosen, not bought. Loved, not owned." Gasps filled the room. Some council members looked furious. Others looked afraid. Harrow slammed his hand on the table. "Silence. Pets do not speak. And you," he pointed a trembling finger at Ethan, "you will answer for this. Did you teach it? These words? Did you break our laws?" Ethan felt his knees weaken. He could lie. He could deny everything. But then he looked at her. Her eyes locked onto his, fierce and steady. She had risked everything by speaking. If he betrayed her now, he would destroy her. "I didn't teach her," Ethan said slowly, his voice shaking. "She learned on her own. She's not like the others." The council chamber erupted in angry whispers. The woman counselor leaned forward. "Do you expect us to believe that? That a creature bred for obedience suddenly thinks she's your wife?" "She's not lying," Ethan said firmly. His fear began to turn into something else, defiance. "She's different, smarter, stronger, more human than you think." Harrow's face turned red with anger. "This is blasphemy against our order. If we allow this, what next? Pets walking as equals? Pets claiming marriage? It would destroy everything we built." The guards shifted uneasily, gripping their weapons. Ethan clenched his fists. "Maybe everything you built is wrong." The words slipped out before he could stop them. The chamber froze. The girl stepped closer to Ethan, standing at his side. She lifted her chin, her voice calm but powerful. You fear me because I am not silent. You fear him because he chose me. But fear will not chain us. We are already bound. Her words carried a strange weight, almost like a vow. The counselors stared at her, their faces pale. One of them whispered, almost in fear, "What is she?" Harrow slammed his fist again. "Enough. Guards, seize her, and arrest Ethan for breaking the law." The guards stepped forward, weapons raised. But before they could touch her, she moved. Her violet eyes flared bright, glowing like fire. A wave of invisible force rippled through the room. The torches flickered violently. The guards froze in place, unable to step closer. Ethan stared in shock. He had never seen her like this before. The counselors scrambled back, their voices shaking. "She's dangerous. She's not a pet, she's a threat." The girl looked at Ethan, her voice soft but steady. "Do you trust me?" Ethan's heart pounded. The memory of their first meeting, her first words, "not a pet," rushed back into his mind. And now, in front of the entire council, he realized the truth. "I trust you," he whispered. The force around them grew stronger, rattling the walls. The guards tried to push forward, but could not move. The girl's eyes burned brighter. She raised her hand, not in attack, but in warning. "Touch him," she said coldly, "and you will regret it." The chamber filled with silence and fear. 4. The first time, the council saw not a pet, not even a wife, but something far greater. Ethan reached for her hand. She took it, her fingers warm against his. They walked out of the chamber together, the guards too afraid to move. The council sat frozen in their seats, knowing the balance of power in the colony had just shifted forever. And for the first time, Ethan realized she had been right all along. She wasn't his pet. She wasn't his possession. She was his wife. And now, the entire colony would have to face that truth. The escape from he bought a pet, yet she chose to be his wife. Humanity. HFY tale. The heavy doors of the council chamber slammed behind Ethan and the alien girl. The echo rolled through the halls like thunder. For a moment, there was silence. Then came the alarm. A harsh siren wailed across the colony, its sharp cry cutting through the night air. Red warning lights flashed along the streets. "They're coming," Ethan said, pulling her arm. His voice was tight with fear. Her violet eyes glowed faintly, calm even now. "Then we run." The colony was alive with movement. Guards poured into the streets, weapons in hand. Loudspeakers blared, "Citizen Ethan, surrender your creature immediately. Both are charged with breaking the law." People rushed out of their homes, whispering, pointing. Some shouted in anger, others in fear. Ethan pulled her down an alley, his heart pounding. "We can't go home. They'll search it first." "Then where?" she asked softly. He thought fast. There was only one chance, the landing bay at the edge of the colony. If they could reach it, maybe they could steal a ship. Maybe they could escape. They moved quickly, darting through narrow streets. But everywhere they turned, guards were. Already searching. At one corner, a patrol blocked their path. Ethan froze. The guards raised their weapons. "Stop right there," one shouted. Ethan's stomach dropped. He had no weapon, no plan. But then she stepped forward. Her eyes blazed with violet fire. A ripple of force swept out like a wave. The guards stumbled back, their weapons yanked from their hands by invisible power. Ethan stared in shock. You can do that?" She grabbed his hand. "Only because you trust me." They ran again. Every step echoed with danger. Sirens, shouts, heavy boots chasing close behind. At last, the landing bay came into view, a wide platform where ships rested under floodlights. But it wasn't empty. Dozens of guards stood ready, blocking the way. Their rifles glowed with charge, aimed straight at Ethan and the girl. The captain stepped forward, voice booming. "It's over, Ethan. Step away from that creature." "She is." "Not your wife. She is a threat." Ethan's chest heaved. He looked at her. She looked back, calm but fierce. "No," Ethan shouted, his voice breaking. "She's not a threat. She's my choice." The captain's face twisted in anger. "And you've chosen death." The guards fired. Bolts of light cut through the air. Ethan braced for the burning pain, but it never came. She raised both hands, and a shield of violet energy bloomed around them like a dome. The bolts slammed against it and fizzled out. The ground trembled under her power. Gasps filled the air. Even the guards hesitated. Ethan couldn't breathe. He had never seen anything like it. You're protecting us." She smiled faintly. "We protect each other," but the shield trembled. The firepower was too strong. Cracks of light spread across the barrier. "They will break through," she whispered. Ethan's mind raced. They needed a ship. Fast his eyes darted across the landing bay. At the far edge, an old cargo hauler. It wasn't fast, but it could fly. "There," he pointed. She nodded. Together they sprinted across the open ground. The shield flickered, sparks flying as energy blasts struck around them. Ethan leapt onto the ramp, pulling her after him. The inside of the ship was dark and dusty, but the controls still glowed faintly. He dropped into the pilot's seat, hands trembling as he powered the engines. The old hauler groaned, metal shaking like it might fall apart. "Hurry," she said. Softly, standing guard by the ramp, her eyes glowing as she deflected incoming fire. The engines roared to life. The guards surged forward. Some leapt onto the ramp. One grabbed Ethan's arm, yanking him from the seat. Before Ethan could cry out, she struck. A wave of force blasted the guard off the ramp, hurling him across the bay. Ethan looked at her in awe. She stood tall, silver hair glowing under the floodlights, her eyes fierce with power. The ship shuddered, rising slowly from the ground. The guards shouted in panic. Some fired again, but the blasts only bounced off the ship's hull dot with a final roar. The hauler lifted into the night sky. The colony grew smaller below them. The alarms faded into silence. Ethan slumped back in his chair, sweat dripping down his face. He looked at her, still standing by his side, calm despite everything. "We actually made it," he whispered. She turned to him, her voice soft but firm. "We are not safe yet, but we are free." Her hand slipped into his. He held it tightly, his heart full of something stronger than fear. Not just love. Not just trust. Hope. Far below, in the colony, the council stood watching the ship vanish into the stars. "They will bring ruin," Harrow muttered, his face pale with rage. But another counselor whispered what the others feared to say. "Or they will bring change." Among the stars, from he bought a pet, yet she chose to be his wife. Humanity. HFY tail. The stars stretched out like endless diamonds, scattered across the dark ocean of space. Inside the old cargo hauler, the hum of engines filled the silence. Ethan sat in the pilot's chair, his eyes fixed on the view. For the first time in his life, he was free of the colony's walls, free of the council, free of their rules. Beside him stood the alien girl, no longer a pet, no longer a secret. Her silver hair drifted in the cabin's faint air currents, and her violet eyes shimmered like twin galaxies. She turned to him, her voice soft. "We left everything behind." Ethan nodded slowly. "Yes, but maybe that's not such a bad thing." The ship rattled as it cut through the void. Warning lights flickered across the dashboard. It was old, weak, and not built for long journeys. Ethan frowned. "This thing won't last forever. We'll need supplies, a place to land." She touched the controls gently, her fingers glowing faintly. The ship steadied. The lights stopped flickering. Ethan's eyes widened. You fixed it? Her small smile carried pride. I can shape energy. Machines are easier than hearts. He laughed softly, though his chest still ached from fear and exhaustion. Well, I'm glad one of us knows what they're doing. For a while, they sat in silence, watching the stars. Then Ethan asked the question that had been burning in him since the night began. Why me? Why call yourself my wife? Why choose me at all? Her eyes softened, and for a moment she looked almost fragile. Because when everyone else saw me as property, you saw me as a person. You gave me freedom. You gave me a name. Do you know what that means to someone who had nothing? Ethan swallowed hard, his throat tight. He remembered the day he had brought her home, thinking she was only a companion. How foolish he had been. How blind. He reached for her hand, holding it gently. You're not my pet. You're not my possession. You're everything I never thought I'd find. Her fingers tightened around his. And you are the proof that humans are more than fear, more than chains. The ship drifted toward open space. Ahead, a nebula glowed in colors of red and gold, like a giant fire burning in the void. Ethan felt a pull inside him, fear of the unknown, but also wonder, what do we do now? He asked. She tilted her head, her eyes shining brighter. Than the stars outside. We live. We choose our own path. Together, hours passed. The stars shifted. In the distance, faint signals flickered on the radar. Other ships, other colonies. Ethan stiffened. If they catch us, she placed a finger gently on his lips. No fear, not anymore. We face whatever comes. You taught me trust. Now let me teach you courage. He looked at her, and for the first time in his life, he felt no doubt, no hesitation. Only belief. Suddenly, the cum crackled. A voice hissed through static. Unregistered vessel, identify yourself. You are entering restricted space. Ethan's heart lurched. His hands shook over the controls. Another council? Another prison? But she touched his shoulder, calm and steady. Answer them. Speak with the truth. Ethan pressed the come button, his voice firm, though his heart raced. This is Ethan, and this is my wife. We are free travelers. We seek no war, only a place to belong. There was silence on the other end. The seconds stretched like years. Finally, the voice returned, softer now. Proceed, travelers. The stars are wide. Perhaps there is room for you. Ethan let out a shaky breath. He turned to her, eyes wide. She smiled, as if she had expected nothing less. They flew on, deeper into the sea of stars. As the nebula's glow bathed the ship in red and gold. Ethan reached for her hand once more. Whatever happens out here, he whispered, we face it together. She leaned close, her forehead touching his. Together, always. And in that moment, among the endless stars, Ethan knew something. Greater than fear, greater than rules, greater even than survival. He knew hope, not just for himself, not just for her, but for what humanity could become. Far behind them, on the colony world, whispers spread of Ethan's escape. Some cursed his name, others feared his choice, but a few dared to wonder. Maybe humanity was not doomed to chains and fear. Maybe love, even across worlds, was the most human act of all. The end.